What's up, everybody? Today we're going to go to a town called Adams, Tennessee. Now, Adams is just north of Clarksville, and that's where Dennis Potvin, one of the original members of Papa Zero, moved his family about 8 years ago. Dennis is still very involved with Papa Zero, doing some production work and voiceovers. Now, Adams is a beautiful town. It has some abandoned buildings, and it has one of the most iconic ghost stories in American history. Let's go check it out.
Adams, Tennessee is not a ghost town in a literal sense, but rather in a natural sense. If you visit Adams, you'll find roughly 700 people who call this small town their home. There is a section of old downtown Adams that has fallen into disrepair. There are some beautiful abandoned buildings and a ghost. And this ghost is so deeply entrenched in Southern folklore that even a former president has spoken on its terrifying rampage. The Bell Witch Ghost. If you don't know about the Bell Witch, she's a poltergeist that is credited with the haunting of farmer John Bell and his family in the early 19th century. The Bells were terrorized by an evil entity that haunted their family for years. Many tourists come to see the historic Bell Witch Cave and a recreation of the Bell's cabin, along with the October Bell Witch Festival, which garners the most visitors of an already busy year. There have been many movies and videos on the subject of the Bell Witch, and the staff did not want us to video this tourist attraction. So we took pictures and are now going to tell you the history of the town of Adams. The first settlement at Adams, Tennessee was in 1780, when William and Martha Johnston and their family settled along the Red River near Elk Fork Creek. The settlers, in what would later become Adams, took part in the famous revival along the Red River in the year 1800. This revival was at first known as the Red River Revival. A couple of years later, having spread over most of the South, it became known as the Great Revival. Some of the outdoor meetings, known as camp meetings, had between 5,000 to 10,000 guests in attendance. This was at a time when the area was still on the frontier, and the population was sparse. One of the regular camp meeting sites was Johnston's Campground at Adams on Sturgeon Creek. In the 1800s, this site was often referred to as the place, quote, where all that speaking in tongues went on. Adams, Tennessee was originally known as Red River. The town began to grow when the railroad came through, which led to a grocery store, general store, and other small businesses. During the Civil War, it was a strategic spot for both Union and Confederate armies. Adams was an important supply route for Confederate forces stationed at Fort Donelson. The town was burned by the Union Army. Only 3 buildings were left standing. This was a branch of the Edgefield and Kentucky Railroad, and to protect this supply route, the Confederates constructed a small fort at Adams. Overlooking the river, the purpose of the fort was to guard the railroad bridge. The fort consisted of a round blockhouse with 3 rings of breastworks. It was known as Fort Redmond, until it was abandoned and garrisoned by Federal forces. They renamed it Red River Blockhouse No. 1. Fort Redmond was the scene of 2 battles between Union and Confederate forces, twice being recaptured by the Confederates. On one such occasion, the Confederate forces consisted mostly of local farmhands who assisted a company of the 2nd Kentucky Cavalry in the storming and capture of the fort. It was perhaps in retaliation for this that the town was burned by the Union Army. After the war, the small community became known first as Adams Station for a local businessman, Reuben Adams. This was when the first depot and post office were built around 1860. Adams was incorporated on November 10, 1869. Station was dropped from the name on February 10, 1898. The commerce of the town was mainly tobacco, wheat, soybeans, and corn. By the 1920s, Adams began to receive a steady flow of automobile traffic due to its location along U.S. Route 41, which was one of the main roads from Michigan to Florida. However, the city began to decline in the mid-20th century with the construction of Interstates 24 and 65, which drew much of the automobile traffic away from US 41. The discontinuance of passenger rail traffic caused the ultimate decline in Adams. Or could it be the Bell Witch? After all, she vowed to come back in the legend. Whether it was the road, rail, or a witch, this town is a shell of its former self.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, since this is our 10th year on YouTube, please like and subscribe to this channel. And while you're at it, like and subscribe to the Facebook and the podcast too. We got some really cool stuff over there. Until next time, take care and God bless.
Population of 0 is in my head. Population of 0.